All right, good morning, everybody. I'm just doing a little bit of design work here, so this is my video one. So this is the stock EMCO control panel. What I found is these are keyboards essentially. All these buttons and stuff. And I guess Linux and the Raspberry Pi don't want to talk to those as is. I'm going to look into drivers and stuff like that down the road, but these guys down here are going to be physical buttons, and these go directly to the controller, so I can actually interface with the e-stop. This one's not connected to anything. The cycle start is, and the agreement button is what they call it is. And then obviously the monitor that I did replace. All right, so I went ahead and I pulled the PC out of here with its whole panel, so I cleaned that area up. All of the cabling I kind of pulled, undid the ground from that panel, kind of nicely tangled this cable up with all of the switches and stuff that went to the lower buttons. I put some labels on them just so I know where they came from. The USB to that panel is in here, so that's just kind of nicely tucked out of there. What I'm thinking is this little panel might be a perfect spot to bolt on where I can do the standoff for the Raspberry Pi down here, just so it sits here, or I can put it up absolutely up here, or really I want it in this space so that if I needed to get in here I could fix that. But that cable will go out of the way. These will be the cables that I'll actually use. I'll actually tie a ground back into this panel at some point, and then power and USB and Ethernet and stuff. So all those cables I'm just going to tuck out of my way for now. They're just down in the keyboard area for now. So I've got the measurements for my first cardboard design. I've taken that in the computer, redesigned it again. So I've kind of created this panel here, right? And you can kind of see it's on this 18-degree angle here to match the angle that this guy was, right? So I've got a slew of holes in here, right? I've got the mounting holes, the D6, 7, 8 here. And then what I did is I created a, where is it? Bracket that then gets it back to this 0 angle, this vertical angle, right? And this is going to be a Visa bracket to mount that 20 to 23 inch Dell monitor onto, right? So that way it's a nice big touchscreen, and it's just slightly bigger than the stock panel. My red panel that I'm making here is actually about a ½ inch in from these edges, and it butts up to this bottom edge where the keyboard drawer is, and then I've got all the room in the world up top. That's just kind of what I was playing with. So I'll just hide the monitor real quick. Right, so there's that little Visa bracket. It'll be bent sheet metal. I think I'm going to do these out of aluminum just because it was a little bit cheaper, like 50-52, I think. Some pass-through holes for the Visa to mount onto that, and then some pass-through holes to bolt it on, and then I could actually get my arm through here to get some nuts or something on the back of this. So there's, hopefully what it looks like will be, Pro Basic or something up on that screen. And then if we keep going, I added this other panel down here. This panel down below here, I made it for buttons and controls, right? So keep in mind that there is the keyboard down here, but I did for physical buttons. So like a big ass e-stop, right? And that'll be closest to the actual machining area, so it'll be easy within reach. And then other things would be a cycle start and stop button, right? Or pause, feed, hold, whatever I want to program that to be. Yeah. And then some wishful thinking would be 2 of these Elgato Stream Decks. There seem to be some drivers that people have gotten them to work with Linuxcnc. It looks like there's some GitHub projects out there. This is that standard, 15 one, and this is that 32 one. And my thought is, right, if I zoom in here, my thought would be like Y forward to back, plus or minus a X, and then like a Z, or a Z, and then an A axis. So have all the movements here, and then have the increments across the top, you know, there's a couple more buttons to play with, and then just leave that static so that those pages won't change. But then over here, all of these can be other functions and features of Linux or whatever else, and then I could actually have different pages of options. I can make this the MDI keyboard, all that kind of stuff, quick functions, that kind of stuff that's not up here. With this being a touchscreen, I don't know really how useful those would be, but it'd be nice to have like a probing routine so I wouldn't have to go to the probe or, you know, ATC tooling, that kind of stuff, without having to jump through the different screens. I did think about having the, like, I think some of them have like the soft buttons here is doing a row of buttons, but I like how clean that kind of looks. Right? That just kind of has a nice little vibe. That one I think will be just like raw brushed aluminum or satin aluminum. I'll powder coat probably this big panel red to kind of match the machine. And then probably just leave that one raw because I don't really need it as much. But yeah, there's some nice, could get a nice look in there. And then other thing would be like, do I need labels? Probably like a start and off, or label the button itself. But then because these are all Stream Deck buttons, they're their own display, so they would have their own labels. So I wouldn't necessarily need to label anything else. Obviously, the E-Stop button has its little surround thing on there, but it's a big red button. So, all right, so here's my laser computer. You can see I've got the big red panel. I'm doing it upside down. And then the button panel, I've got them laid out for my laser, which is 2x3, so I've got plenty of room to play with here. So let's send it the laser and get this cutting. So I'm using a bunch of magnets kind of spread around this. I'll do one more for good luck. Just to keep the wood from bowing up while it cuts. So this should probably take about 10-15 minutes. So let's full send and send it. And this just finished over here. All right, let's take a peek. All right, here's the button panel. Pop those out of there. That'll look good. And then take the magnets off of this guy. And then here's the big panel, right? So that'll go to cover that panel. And then this guy will come and sit up there, like so. So I've got this panel bolted on. There's some adjustments that I could use. Like this needs to go like down 0.5. These can go out 0.5. It just kind of tugs a little bit in some spots. It sits nicely. So I'm guessing over time with some of these sheet metals, like it just kind of drifted a millimeter here or there. But that fits pretty nicely. I've got enough room to get up in here. All right, so this guy is done. Just pull the brim off of him. Little fuzzies, but you know, it's a thin 3D print, so I wanted it to work. Right, so I've got this test panel made up. And that'll sit up there nicely. So one thing I didn't account for when I designed my Visa bracket, and this could be modified, but I think I'm going to use spacers instead, is on the back of this Dell monitor, it's actually inset where the Visa plate goes. Luckily, I don't throw anything away, so I've actually got spacers from another monitor mount, TV mount or something. So those will actually go in there and raise this so it actually sits flush or just above or below the inset that it's got. So when I stick this guy on there, it'll actually sit on the spacers on that as opposed to floating. So I'll just need to get the appropriate length M4 screws. I probably will do a 3D printed spacer to go in there, but this will work. Alright, so I've got those panels mounted up now. The angle is great. I love the angle of this, how it gets it back to vertical, if not with the flex of the panel and stuff, maybe 1 degree past. I think I just want to go higher because right now the middle of the screen is about chest high, which is good for hand operation, but I think I want to go, because I don't like seeing the top of this red, so maybe another 2 or 3 inches higher, just to kind of be level with that, with the top of the screen. So it's probably 2 inches up, and then that'll give me enough space down here from these buttons, I think, just for a nice separation there. I can, because I want to see this whole brush panel. I don't want to see the top panel up there, just for looks sake. But functionally, it's got some wobble, obviously, because it's 3D printed in wood. The top of the button panel is not actually bolted in. But once those two are bolted together, that's going to now make that section 4 mil thick. So that's going to be a strong base down here, and then the whole top is going to be bolted on in this Visa bracket with 2 mil thick. I'm not worried about. So any flex or wobble out of this should be taken up. That's going to be a lovely, huge panel to work with, and I can still get in and out of the keyboard tray, no issue. Yeah, and then the nice big buttons. So I think I just got a couple minor measurements with these holes just for spacing's sake, and then probably about 2 inches higher there. And then I just need to get the correct length screws for the Visa mount. And then instead of M6, I'm using 1/4-20s, so 6.35 mil. And that's just what I had on hand, and that's fine. But I'll get all the appropriate hardware when it's go time. But that's actually, that's a best permanent temporary solution I've ever seen. Alright, so I just got version 3 off the laser cutter and mounted up. The monitor now sits 2 inches higher, so it actually sits probably about half an inch higher than that lip. But if I'm looking pointing straight ahead, that's kind of chest, so that's actually a much better height for viewing sake. Gives me a nice reveal for the button panel and stuff. And then I just got this temporarily screwed in nicely. I've got I think I've dialed in all the hole placements. And then this is screwed into the back panel temporarily, so it is strengthening it up. So there is still some wobble, but that's just the wood and the plastic wobble. I think once this becomes metal, and that bracket becomes metal back here, all the wobble is going to be out of this. And even it's not a huge wobble, but it's because this part's unsupported. But I think once that's aluminum, I think I'll be all right. Last thing I just got to figure out, all the cable routing will go up in here, and there's a slight gap that I think I can get them in, and then I'll put a grommet in that hole right there, just to keep any critters and dust and stuff out of that cabinet. Alright, par for the course. It's been a couple months. The machine's still kind of at this standstill. I'm working on this front panel. Here's the Masonite, the hardboard prototype. I did do an order of some sheet metal laser cut, and then this one I ended up skipping their powder coating and just spray painted it myself with some Rust-Oleum. That guy will get mounted up in there. Lines up nicely. I'm just going to rest that on the keyboard tray. I put a little grommet in there in the center hole where all the cables will pass through. And then the little button panels, I got 2 versions because it was so cheap to add one of these. I got one with the Stream Deck regular version and one with the XL as well. And then the E-stop, the start and the stop are the green and the red buttons. And then this one I just left blank. I could always cut stuff out of that down the road. Somehow I deleted one of my mounting holes. But I think what I'm going to do is start with that one. I got to drill that last hole in there. And then what you'll see, right, I'll just drop the E-stop in there. Right, in those buttons. And then the little Elgato Stream Deck will sit up in there, like so. And then the last piece that I got, this one I actually got from a different service that did the sheet metal bending. This one's aluminum, so it's actually really, really light.
but the same thickness. That's going to be for that monitor bracket, so it'll bolt up in there, and it'll bolt on the back of this Dell monitor that I have. So that'll sit up in there. And then this is nice and rigid. This will be nice and rigid, especially once it's bolted in with that other front plate. So I will have to countersink these 10 holes. And then I gotta drill 2 tiny little holes down here. Two other screws here. Right. So that'll be the regular Stream Deck, and then if I choose to do the big one, it'll sit in like that. Just like that. Right, so if I choose to do that one, that'll sit right in there. These screws temporarily. All right, so there is this panel temporarily bolted on. I'll need to tap that hole, and then once I drill that one through, I'll tap this red plate. It probably needs a little wet sand and another coat of paint. The other side is actually fine. It's just this side just is a little splotchy. But there's the E-stop, 2 buttons, and then the Stream Deck nicely behind that panel. And I just need to get the other 2 holes under here bolted, so it's got a little play right now, but it's nice and rigid up here. And then the next thing, or actually should have waited, would be the monitor. So I actually need to take this off so I can get to the back. So for the monitor mount, right, so it's got these 2 pass-through holes and then 2 slotted holes. The way it works is obviously the monitor bolt onto this first, right there, and then it'll sit on these 2 bolts. These are all going to be 1/4-20 screws or bolts. I need to find if I have 4 hex heads so that I can get a box wrench on it. Right now these are just button heads, which are nice big head on them, but I need a box head so I can get a wrench on it, and then come in on the back end. I've got a nut. So the monitor will get picked up, set down, get the other 2 bolts in, and then I can tighten all 4 of them down. And then once that's in, pick up the correct screws that I want, which will probably be some button heads to mount this plate, some hex heads for that, tap or drill these 5 holes, and then countersink all 10 of those, and then thread those 3. Then I can bolt the Stream Decks back in, or at least this one can kind of stay in there once it's mounted. All right, so here's kind of a 98% of the way. I still need to drill this hole, but all of the screws mounting the Stream Deck are now countersunk behind this, so that's nice and flat. These holes are threaded, all 3 of these in the red. I just need to drill this through the base plate. I'm gonna go run to the store and pick up some black button heads. I think these will be all M4 black button heads for some nice contrast in there and some low profile, and the 4 hex head ones, and then I need 4 M4s to mount onto the monitor itself. and then this can start getting buttoned up a little bit. So I'm just going to take off this faceplate real quick here, right? Just set that aside. There's that other faceplate. Now you can see I just have 2 screws in there right now. I need a little bit longer ones, but they're all countersunk. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this with some Scotch-Brite or a wet sand, a high grit, to take off any of these burrs, but these will sit nicely in there. That's bolted in there securely. Yeah, I hit this high grit or Scotch-Brite just to scuff it up and then give it another coat of paint or 2 today. Alright, so I got the panel out here. I'm just going to hit it with this ultra-fine sanding pad, kind of scuff it and smooth it, and then I'll hit it with a couple coats of paint to seal it back up. That should do it. It's a nice heavy wet coat there. Before I start buttoning any of this stuff up, the last thing I need to do, obviously I took the mini PC out of here, and I'm now using that Raspberry Pi, so I think I'm going to use these lower 2 studs with nuts and make a little bridge plate and a plate to hold the Raspberry Pi here, as opposed to in the machine cabinet. It'll be here, so it'll be mounted kind of a pain in the butt, but it'll be behind that faceplate. I can still get access to it pretty quickly. The stock PC power supply that was here, I just got a little adapter cable to split it to 2. This will power the Raspberry Pi, you know, it's low voltage, and then the other one will come out to the monitor when it's bolted on here. Ethernet is still run here from the stock machine. The USB for the mouse and keyboard run straight down this little loop. The stock cycle start and stop button connectors or wiring is still here and runs to the back, so that's good. There's a USB cable that runs to the back as well, and then obviously a grounding as well. So there's still some cables that I can still reuse here, but I think I just need to make a new bridge plate, riser, put a Raspberry Pi here, then I can connect up the Stream Deck, the monitor, its touchscreens and all that here instead of running long stuff to the back. Yep. So I'm toying with the idea of where the Raspberry Pi will mount. I'm kind of second guessing my initial mounting it here to the machine itself. I was thinking of if I'm going to put the Elgato Stream Deck in there, is make a plate and attach it on the back here. Right, so then I take the faceplate off, 4 screws, and then this comes out with the Elgato. And then I was looking at it, if I'm using this plate that doesn't have the XL Elgato in there, which I'll probably use for a while until I need that capability, maybe I use the design that I have for the XL, since I have the outside dimensions, do a recessed Stream Deck mount, or not a Stream Deck. Since I have the XL Stream Deck mount, maybe I do a recessed Pi mount using this same pattern, so that the big Elgato, the buttons, and then the Pi would sit behind this base plate or faceplate. I kind of like that idea. So that way it's like, in the meantime, I want to get this one working for sure. Second Elgato, I don't even know. I don't have one, the big one ordered or anything. So I may not ever need it, especially if I have this one. And then in the future, I could just swap out this and move the Pi to the back once it's more permanent, semi-permanent, I guess, if I wanted to go to this or other buttons or something there. And then while I'm in here cleaning things up, right, so that PC case that was in here would actually close this whole gap up, right? It would close that entire gap up. So I think I'll need to do, I can use these 2 bolts here, I think, and just do a panel, a flat panel, acrylic or something. Making progress here on the front end with the Raspberry Pi side. You can see I've got QT Dragon, just a basic setup here, to the Dell monitor 23-inch. I've got touchscreen capabilities, which is great. The control panel plate I've got works perfectly. The monitor bracket, power, HDMI, and the USB from the monitor feed through the grommet. Great. Front control panel, these 3 buttons, the e-stop, the start and stop buttons, they're just unplugged right now. They're not, I don't actually have wires run or anything for that yet. See, I got the Elgato Stream Deck on here. It's plugged into the Raspberry Pi, and I'll open that in a second. But if we activate, you can see I've got a little Pi program running, and I've got some keypads, some jog controls here, right? So if I jump back into this, you can see I can actually jog around now. So I've got X, Y, Z, and A, future 4th axis. I've got a jog increment mode. The text and font are a little funky on these. I've got a work coordinates, machine coordinates, and then an offset kind of status page, a feed and rapid overrides status page, fonts kind of double up for some reason, and then a spindle status. So if I turn on the spindle, now you can see I'm reading 12,000 spindle, and it's on, it's green, and it's off. Spindle. I've got 3 buttons that are just unplugged right now, and then I got to clean up these images a little bit. There's a little background that's kind of gross that I need to clean up, but that's actually huge. It kind of panics every now and then, like that, or just kind of locked into a jog mode. So not perfect, it probably needs a little bit of cleanup, but this is just me toying around the past couple nights in code and some AI stuff. So I'm kind of digging that as it is. We'll just stop that just to get it to come back home. Yeah, occasionally every now and then it'll just start jogging off to infinity for some reason. I have a feeling there's some kind of debounce or something in the Stream Deck. So if we take this panel off and take a peek, right, they're not wired or anything, they're just kind of hanging out. You can see I got the Elgato on the little 3D printed mount. On the back of this, that's where the Raspberry Pi is mounted on a piece of acrylic bolted on the bolts here. I need to actually recut that piece of acrylic. I've got some power run to the Pi. The Pi is run to this. Power is then split to go to the monitor, USB to that, and then I've got 2 other a little mini USB hub to go to the mouse and keyboard as well, that are all kind of tucked in there. I do have room for expansion for another Elgato. It was on sale this weekend, so I picked one up. It'll be here tomorrow or the next day. And on that one, I'm going to do the homing, the tool changing, the e-stop, all those kind of buttons that would be up here as well, just to give them another place. My goal, I think, is to try to eliminate some of the sub pages and put them all on down here on a physical button. Yeah, but now I think I'm at a point I'm happy up here on the front end. The Pi, Linuxcnc, and that kind of work all in tandem. Now I just need to get into the back end, the wiring, and finish wiring up to the Mesa board. The part I'm kind of dreading.